Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the LATAM Stocks Podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Flood. Today, I'm speaking with Gabriel Boente. Gabriel is an equity research analyst at Varos in Brazil, where he specializes in agriculture-related investments. Today, we're going to go over Brazil's agro industry, and then we're going to focus on two specific companies and industries. First, we're going to talk about paper and cellulose and Brazil's giant company in that industry, Suzano. And then we're going to talk about the beef industry and Minerva Foods and a major acquisition that happened mid last year. So we've got a ton of ground to cover and only an hour to do it. So let's get right into it. Hi, Gabrielle. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. It's a great pleasure to talk to you and your audience.
Yeah. I'm excited to talk to you. I'm fascinated by the industry niches you cover in agro and the agro equity. So I think we have a lot to talk about. But before we get into it, tell me a little more about you. Where are you from? What'd you study? How did you end up doing equity research at Varos?
Okay. First of all, I'm here now speaking from Rio, and I was born in Rio, but my whole life, and I grew up in Brasilia, that is the capital of Brazil. I graduated in business administration. Here we only say administration from University of Brasilia. That is our federal institute. Each state has its own federal institutes, like the best universities. They are public, of course. Despite having studied administration, I did many researches in agribusiness due to the fact that Brasilia in Cerrado, all the region, all Middle West in Brasilia, Middle East in Brasilia, Middle West, the Cerrado, that is the Brazilian savanna. So we do a lot of grains, major grains in the region, right? Like soybeans and corn. So I did a lot of projects and research focusing on agribusiness. And I mean, it's a great sector, right? This is the Brazil's strength. So, but at the same time, I love the financial market. I love the stock exchanges. I love equity. So I studied both. So when I graduated in 2020, I think 2020, I decided to produce some content about it because we can see that there is not many analysts talking about Brazilian agribusiness, specifically about the companies that are in B3, that is our stock exchange. So I started to do some content on Twitter, of course, now X, and it was good. So I've been working in banks. I'm working on Santander. I'm working on some fintech. I love the venture capital, the venture capital craziness, right? So, but after a while, doing some content on Twitter, the people from Varos call me and say, "Hey, do you want to be some analyst here?" I said, "Okay." So 2 years ago, I moved back to Rio, but now the city of Rio, I'm in the city of Niterói, this neighbor, a
Yeah.
neighbor city. It's really close. And now I'm here. My focus is not on the commodities, okay? I focus on the
Mm.
companies. But all my companies, they produce and they sell the commodities. So I have to understand, I have to know about the commodities. But if you ask me, how's the soybean price today on Chicago? I can tell you. But I have to understand agribusiness, okay? And I have to understand these dynamics. So pulp and paper, meat, soybeans, corn, I have to know it all. So there's a lot of things to know once at a time. So I focus on the companies. I'm here now in Varos. In Brazil, we call analysis houses, but it's basically we are research. So we study, our focus is on the companies that are listed on the Brazilian Stock Exchange, the B3. So each analyst covered a specific sector. Like I am cover agribusiness, the other cover industry, energy. So we have a lot of specialists here in Varos. And our biggest difference here is like we go really deep on our analysis. So, as I showed you one of my
Yeah.
reports, we have 50, 60, 70 pages long, our reports. And we also do a short documentary about the report. So, our subscribers have the option. You can watch or you can read.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's kind of Netflix.
Yeah.
So, it's really easy to our subscribers, right? So I love working here. We have really a long time to study, But we are now like more commercial. So our reports are shorter, and 50-page long is shorter than than the past. But we are more commercial. So now as we do some recommendations to major buy, we do not say sell something. So we only do the recommendations based on our analysis. So we are more slower than the others research because we do more perfectly. We like to understand the whole business before say you can buy or you can sell. So we have and we can say that we got a lot of security on our target prices, for example. So when I say I covered some agribusiness companies, I mean I know everything about them. So I have this security to talk about the companies. Okay.
Yeah. Your analysis was very in depth. The one you sent me on Suzano, I really enjoyed it, the PowerPoint.
Uh-huh.
And
Great.
I think I agree with your point about agro business in Brazil being underfollowed. I think it's underfollowed in general. And then even the analysts that do follow it tend to follow more commodity prices than they
Yeah.
do the actual stocks. And there's a ton of great businesses listed in Brazil that are agriculture businesses that seem underfollowed for how important Brazil is as an agro market.
Yeah, we have this recent example. One of my favorite companies that is SLC. They are the biggest land explorers in Brazil. They have like 600,000 hectares in production. Major, mostly soybeans. So they are the biggest group in Brazil. And because we are on El Nino right now, we are like in the bottom of the cycle. So the prices are really low. And I know because I studied. And when I do my projections, we do the DCF in our projections. We project 10 years ahead. So anything that happens now can be mostly a noise, unless, of course, they're going to change the thesis, which is not the case. So El Nino, for example, it's kind of noise because when I do our mean, I project by the productivity of the land, by the mean, the historical mean. So it's already in my price, the past El Ninos. So I have this security on my price. And I was like, okay, it's really cheap, but the market is not seeing. So recently, other family, in agro in Brazil, we have this family business. Other family that produce the Explorer Landers, the Schaeffer family, they bought 5% of SLC for 150 million reais. This is 5% only of the company.
Mm-hmm.
And they say nobody was expecting that. And when they ask the family, they say it's really low, it's really cheap, the price. So, and now is the cheapest way to buy lands in Brazil is buying SLC stocks. They say that they explore lands too. They are on the one of the biggest, the top three.
Yeah.
So as you see, the markets they like to trade the present, the moment. They are not so secure about the prices when you cover it. Because okay, the commodity market is a crazy, it's craziness. Change, we have a lot of volatility. But when we see 10 years ahead, it's a business that lasts. The agro in Brazil lasts. We are since the 70s doing this and improving our land and our productivity. So we have this example and pulp and paper and beef. So this really strength, and we do not have many analysts covering this. So it's a challenge and a pleasure to me to do it.
So I have an analyst question for you then. You mentioned that you do your projections out for 10 years for your discounted cash flows. But I noticed it in your Suzano write-up that you do 8 years because it's the eucalyptus cycle. So when you do commodities investments and you do a discounted cash flow, do you always try and match the duration of the projection to the full cycle? So are you trying to project for a full commodity cycle? Is that why you do 8 years, or is it the crop cycle? Because eucalyptus is 8 years.
Yeah, we try to do, each channel is different from each other. So when we say the pulp and paper, for example, they have little volatility in their commodity and their stock price. So we can follow this cycle. So for example, Suzano, it's only eucalyptus. So we can project this. Full eucalyptus cycle is 7 years. So I project 8, that one cycle plus 1 year plus the last. So we can do it on Suzano. But like Minerva, I forgot, but I think I projected 10 years. It's a great time because we can take the ups and downs of the cycle. But the trees last long, right? So eucalyptus lasts 7 years, but the pinos last 15 in Brazil. In Europe, it's 20. So we try to match those cycles with our projection. It's like we here in Varos, we are huge fans of Damodaran. So we say the narrative and numbers, right? We match our numbers with the narrative. So I'm not trying to match the cycle, but if it has only this cycle, we can match. Like for crop, for SLC, for example, we have harvests every year, and every harvest we can have 1 or 2 or 3 crops, 2 crops in 1 year. So I project 10 years for now because you can take the great times like La Nina in Cerrado because the weather is good, and we take the bad weather like El Nino, that like we are living right now. So each case is special, right? So this is the analyst's job to try to balance all of this in a price and projection that makes sense.
Awesome. So let's move in then to the company and industry specific stuff. Let's talk about Pulp and Paper and Suzano. So you had a great thread on Twitter about the history of Suzano. It's a very historic company. It's over 110 years old now. Still the same family is involved, which is unique and interesting in its own right. So tell me about Brazil's pulp and paper industry. And yeah, I guess Suzano is a huge part of the history of the industry and still is the largest player. So tell me about the industry in Suzano.
Okay. For pulp and paper in Brazil, we have 2 specific cases. First, Suzano is the biggest and for me is the most important company in the world from eucalyptus. Because what happened in the past? They kind of invented the pulp from the eucalyptus. Yeah, in 1951. So in the old times, we used to produce paper by the pinus wood. So pinus is a European tree. And as I said, we need to take 20, 30 years to can cut the pines once it planted. So it's really long, and Brazil at that time need to import this. So Leon Pfeffer, that is the founder in 1920s, he saw it. This is a problem that you have to import all of your material. So he asked to his son to look for a new source. So they like a scientific team, and it's kind of funny because Max, that is Leon's son, was a student at Juilliard's in New York. So he did nothing about trees and stuff. He was a musician. But he led this technical team, and they found out that eucalyptus was the best choice. So they are the pioneers in this. And the first one in the world to produce celluloses from eucalyptus. And eucalyptus is really, really fast. It took like 7 to 8 years in Brazil to grow up, and you can cut and make the pulp. So Suzano invented that, basically made the industry to prove their point, because a brand new material, no one tends to believe, right? So they basically invented the industry to prove their point. And now they were right, because they are the biggest in the world. I got the stats, the data. They produced 10.9 millions of tons of cellulose last year. The second place was Domtar. They produced 5.6 millions of tons in the world.
And this is globally, or this is Brazilian companies? So this is global players.
Global last year, Suzano produced 10.9 millions of tons of pulp, and the second place produced only 5.6. So it's almost the double of the production. So Suzano is a huge basically a monster of celluloses. Basically, they produce the short fiber. We have 2 types of fibers in celluloses, the cellulose market, the long and the short. The long you use pinus, the short you use eucalyptus. You can make a lot of products, sub-products with there, but the Suzano major focus is on pulp. So they are the biggest, and this is the biggest revenue from Suzano.
And Suzano and Brazil's pulp and paper industry is a huge exporter, correct? So in
Yeah.
fact, a large portion, the majority of Suzano's revenue comes from outside of Brazil. So
Yep.
can you talk about then the Brazilian industry, how important it is as an export for Brazil pulp and paper? And then where is Brazil selling all this pulp and paper?
Okay. So I got the data just to shock the audience.
Nah, we love the
Uh,
data.
yeah. Suzano has planted forests in 11 different states in Brazil.
Yeah.
If we add all the areas, they had 2.7 million hectares of land, which 1.4 is only eucalyptus and 1.1 is to environmental preservation. That is the law in Brazil. You cannot exploit all of land. You have to basically cut the half, and the half is for environmental preservation, and the other half is to produce. This is law in Brazil. If if you disobey the law, it's a really big problem. Okay, so if we took this 1.4 millions of hectares, this is something like 17 times the area of the New York, the city of New York.
And
So
that's just what Suzano has planted.
yeah, and just eucalyptus. So you can imagine New York 17 times bigger and only trees. That is
Now,
what Suzano has.
do they own the land or do they lease the land typically?
They own some part, the most part are owned, but some specific areas they have to lease. But the major own, but if they lease, they have this partnership with the local producers to treat the lands for them so they can explore better. So this kind of problem right now, because the two Brazilian biggest companies are Suzano and Klabin. They both finished, actually, Klabin finished the biggest mills in October. That is Projeto Puma, Puma Project 2, in Ortigueira, state of Paraná. And Suzano are finishing the mill, the Cerrado project in Ribas do Rio Prado, that is Mato Grosso do Sul state. So those are the two biggest pulp and paper mills in the world, and they like finish almost at the same time. The Suzano are finishing right now, and Klabin already finished. So they are so big that we do not, they specifically, they do not have wood enough to produce pulp and paper.
So they
So
overbuilt the capacity because they're
yeah,
projecting future growth, basically.
yeah.
Right?
And like we have exactly amount to both mills. So if they try to build a new one, they won't have enough wood. So because of that, Suzano and Klabin also bought a lot of land recently. I do not have the size of land, but they spent 1.2 billion reais in land, in forests that already are grown to attend the production. So we have the two biggest mills in the world. We have the biggest company in the world, and it's a short volatility commodity, the short fiber. Okay, that the name is BHKP. I always forget this, BH or BKHKP.
Do you know how much it costs to build these new mills? I think it's really important to mention that not only are these the two biggest mills in the world, they're modern, right? They're brand new.
Yeah,
So what kind of investment did Suzano make?
I
What was
think
the
I have on my
capex?
notes. I think I have on my notes, on my reports. Just a minute. But they like, I think they spent dozens of billions reais. Okay.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. They took, yeah, it's around 5 and 6 billion reais. Okay.
So
They,
one to 1.2 billion US dollars, more or
yeah,
less.
and last years.
Yeah, which is
Only
a
last
huge
years.
investment, which is a huge
Yeah.
investment, right?
So, like Suzano last year, for example, they bought the Kimberly-Clark's tissue paper business in Brazil for $175 million.
Yeah.
So they have this lot of money and they are buying everything basically, but only at the short fiber, okay? Because Klabin's main business is with long fiber. Suzano only works with the short fiber. The subproducts are really different because with short fiber, we do mostly tissue paper. There's like paper toilet. To resume, is basically paper toilet. With long fiber, you can do the package boxes with paper. So they're really different and different markets. Of course, Suzano also do the paper stuff, but the main, of course, is pulp. So it's a really, really big business in Brazil. The revenue last year, I think I got it here. The net revenue in 2022 is 49.8 billion reais. So it's like $10 billion for net revenue. So it's really, really big. And most of it, again, is coming from the pulp business.
Yeah. To give listeners an idea, the market cap of Suzano is about 65 billion reais, which is roughly 12, 13 billion US dollars. So it is a big company and the market values it highly. So I want to ask you, one of the things that really stood out in the thing, you had a slide where you outlined the 3 competitive advantages for Suzano. And I think those apply to Brazilian pulp and paper in general, but you tell me. You said Suzano's 3 competitive advantages are high productivity, proximity to the forests, and energy autosufficiency at its factories. So can we maybe take those one by one? Why is Suzano more productive than other pulp and paper manufacturers globally?
Okay. First, they are really scientific company. We can say that. So as I say, they invented this business, this eucalyptus business, and each year they try to improve the seeds of the trees. So they have huge labs only to work on it. So they do really good genetical improvement on their seeds. And so you can gain a lot of productivity and efficient on it. So this is the first point and one of the biggest highlights. Because I didn't say the new type of products and science they are doing, because they're like more in tests. Yeah, they are on the test stages, but the genetical improvement reality in Suzano. So they have great job. The proximity of the mills is like when you cut a tree, you put them on the truck and you have to take the truck to the factory. So if your factory is near, your costs are lower because we can just imagine you have to pay the fuel of the truck, you have to pay the employees of the truck. So when your mill is closer to the forest, your costs can be lower. So Suzano, we say in this market the radius, right? The radius of the mill. And Suzano, I think the radius is I have 202 kilometers. So the average radius, of course. So if and 203 kilometers is really close because we are speaking about 1.5 million of hectares.
It's a few hours drive maximum.
Yeah, exactly. So if they are so close, you can reduce this cost major with fuel and the trucks. We call this in Portuguese the transborder costs. So this is other advantage that Suzano has. And the third, I forgot what you say.
Energy autosufficiency at its factories, which was the most interesting of the 3, honestly, to me. That one really stood out. So tell me what you mean by that. How are their factories autosufficient in energy?
Actually, this is kind of Brazil stuff, okay?
Yeah, that's why.
We love, and not even in pulp and paper, but basically in sugarcane business, it's really common. When you produce the pulp, you have the rest that you do not use. We call this the black liquor in English, the direct translate. It's like a liquid that smells bad, and in all times you just waste, you just throw away. Nowadays, we burn this liquid. And because this liquid is major pulp that you did not use, there are the components of the tree like lignin. So you can burn it and make thermal energy. So with the hot air. So you use this heat energy with the waste of the tree. And I say that it's a Brazilian stuff because anything we do here in Brazil that we produce, we try to take the waste and or throw back in the crop because we'll fertilize the land, or we burn to do some heat energy. So in Brazil we have this, and Suzano also have this. So imagine they produce 10.9 millions of tons of pulp. So imagine the waste of this. So they
Mhm.
took this waste and produce energy. So it's a really sustainable company. And this is a really good difference that Suzano and the Brazilian companies has, unlike the rest of the world,
Yeah,
is really
that's
common you
why
waste.
that's why that one stood out because I think for an international audience, most people don't realize how renewable Brazil's energy grid is in general. And then you
Yep.
see headlines like what's going on in Germany, for example, with the oil price rises, and they're saying it's deindustrializing because, a 10%, 20% up move in electricity costs, suddenly their factories aren't viable. And in Brazil, you can see, how important energy costs are when you look at a company like Suzano that's auto-sufficient and, slowly and steadily at the global powerhouse, right?
Yeah. And actually, we have a fun fact in Brazil because if your mill produce more energy than it uses, so you have the surplus of energy,
Yep.
you can sell back to the
To the
government.
grid. Yep, you sell it back
Yeah.
to the grid. Yeah, yeah. So is Suzano's energy cost at its factory zero? Or do they have some, but it's low and predictable, I guess? Or are they
Yep.
100% auto-sufficient? Like they actually spend zero on energy?
They say they are. They did
Okay.
not open those numbers, but I believe they are.
Close,
The
close
main
enough at
costs,
least.
yeah, the main costs are the mills like other stuff like materials and employees. As the classic SG&A.
So interesting. So then let's get back. I'll ask you again about the exports. So like what are the major export destinations for Suzano's products? And then what are the finished products? Is it just toilet paper that they export or do they export raw material as well?
The major destination are obviously China.
Mhm.
Okay. They do some export on Europe, but we have to think. So they do not buy this big amount, and each year they are decreasing the amount of they are buying. So China, in other way, each year they increase the buy-ins. So the main destination of Suzano's production, mostly pulp, is in China. China has a lot of paper companies. So it's really normal and logical that they buy really much pulp and not a big amount of paper. Actually, for Suzano, the paper business is more local. They mostly sell the paper that is the toilet paper mostly, and the writing paper. We call here writing paper, and we
Yeah.
have some of the top of mind brands in Suzano. So when you go to the supermarket in general and you had to buy some paper from to your office or toilet paper to your house, is we have a lot of chance, the probability are high to you're buying a Suzano product.
Yep.
So this paper business is most Brazil, and the pulp is most for export, mostly to China. And actually, Suzano, one of the few ports that is specific for the pulp business. Because we know the port you can trade a lot of stuff, a lot of products and commodities. So the one of the fewest ports in Brazil that is called Porto Céu, which is located in Espírito Santo state, from only pulp, Suzano owns it. So it's other difference, other competition advantage that Suzano has.
Yeah, I think so. Now we've covered, I think it's important to point out now
Yep.
that it's a fully vertically integrated company, correct? So we've talked
Yep.
about their farms, they grow the trees, they even do research and development for the seeds at their farms. They just built the largest mill in the world. And then
Yep.
they have consumer brands that are top of mind that you can find at major retail outlets in Brazil. So they're fully vertically integrated, correct?
Yep, correct. And this is really good because this is a champion. They are champion business. We like to call here each sector has its own champions, the most succeeded, the biggest companies. And I really believe that Suzano is the champion in Brazilian market, that pulp and paper. They do the sellings, they do the productions, they do everything. They cannot do, they just buy, they they open it.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. It's a really big deal in Brazil, but they are so big that they move slower,
Mm.
even the business and even in the stock price. If you look and Google or calculate yourself the beta of the stock, it's like 0.3, 0.2, 0.4. So even the stock price moves slowly because they are really mature business. So it's not a company that you buy to, oh my God, I'm going here to 100% return in a long term, of course, but in stock that you buy and you can
Yeah.
hold your all life long.
Well, that brings me to my next question, right? It is a generational company, right? 110
Mhm.
years, and the founding family is still very much involved. So the last name of the current CEO is Pfeffer, right? The same family, same last name, but
Not
it's
the
got the
CEO,
chairman of the board.
yeah.
The chairman, okay. So the family still owns it, but nonetheless, how do you view management and their corporate structure being such a historic company with the founding family still involved?
I think here in Brazil, we have these market sections of governance. So in Brazilian Stock Exchange, we call new market or novo
Mm.
mercado, that the companies with the biggest levels, you have some criteria to achieve to enter this group. And Suzano is one of those companies. Unlike Klabin, for example, they are not in this section and they are not trying to enter.
The companies decide which section they want to be in, like which corporate governance
Yeah,
model they want to follow. So they have
yeah.
options for how they
You
report.
you have the highest model. You just have to follow. And
Mm.
Suzano did this follow. The new market is a kind of new thing, but Suzano do this like Chinese wall since the
Mm.
beginning of the century when Max Pfeffer died and David, that is now the chairman, assumed they did the separation that no one in family could do the executive work. So
Mm.
he isn't the CEO, and no one in the family can be the CEO. They only can be in the
Mm.
board.
Okay.
So they have this really clear separation of the family that is more strategical. They live with the gains of the dividends and etc. So, but the executive decisions and routine are from different people. Now is from Walter Schalke, the CEO of the company, and he's doing a really good job, actually. He's every year wins a best CEO prize in Brazil. So they are doing this separation. In Brazil, we have much family business. So we have to look each case where the family are too close or they're too far. We have to study. And Suzano is one of cases that despite the family are in the board and they have the most part of the shares, they are not involved that much in bad decisions and bad strategical
Mm.
decisions, unlike Klabin, for example. So I trust more in this governance.
Mm. Interesting. So is there anything else that we didn't cover, maybe related to the business in general, products, markets, before I ask you a little bit about their financials and balance sheet?
As I said, the Suzano and also Klabin are finishing their biggest mills, the construction. So for the next 7, 8 years, they are not building something new. They can buy, they can take new brands, but build new fabrics, new mills, they won't. So we have to take this on our minds. And when you finish your brand new building, your costs tend to be higher at the first
Mm.
because the revenues came after the beginning. So in this time, also Klabin, Suzano, and Irani, that's the little sister of them, they have these high costs, high historical saying costs because they just finish the projects. But with the time, they are reducing this cost. So when you say, "Oh my God, now the indicators of leverage are higher," yeah, and that is normal and that is expected. So when you see this business, you have to take this on mind. And leverage, it's a business that is naturally leveraged because as the cellulose has one of the lowest volatility in Chicago, for example, and Chicago and China, the prices, the companies are really secure to take a lot of credit and to leverage. So it's a business that the capex is really much higher than the others. So you also need to have this on your mind. So the IRR tax, the IRR in return cannot be that high because they has few emotions. As I say, the stocks do not has this volatility. The price of what they sell there has not this volatility. So the tax of return, interest of return are not that high. But as you said, this is a generational company. So you can hold them forever, but you do not have these surprises. But these are companies that spend a lot in capex, for example.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you about the debt, but you answered that question. Obviously related to build the largest mill in the world, right? You're going to put some debt on the balance sheet most likely. But what do you think in terms of growth then? You mentioned that the mill that they built is bigger than they can even use. So there's plenty of excess capacity. So is growth going to ramp up? Are they going to be constrained by how many trees they can get? What do you expect for growth?
Yeah, we have to. This kind of difficult question because they can produce much more now, but we need someone to buy. So as we see in the Chinese economy is kind of blurred recently, right? We do not know if they are going high or down, up or down. So we have to take a little bit slow also because they now has much more capacity. They can even make and decide their prices, even if they are selling a commodity, because they are really big. So they are bigger now. But as I said, we can expect the volume of the sellings can go up, but you depends on the Chinese economy, basically. They need to keep growing, keep increasing, and you will have to also need the cost and the price of the commodity goes up so you can make better revenues. And you have now your costs are can be high for now, as I said, but they will be lower. So I think the best result in Suzano will come like 1 year or two. Now they are in this phase of settle in a new home, right? So now we have to take a look of the Chinese market and the pulp, the price of the pulp. And they have some triggers like paper in China, because if the economies and the income of the population of an economy goes up, they change their habits. So in the Orient, like China or Vietnam, these countries, the income are rising. So they're like wants a new habits of hygiene. So paper toilets is one of these items. So this is a trigger, but as I said, it walks more slowly than the others. So it's a company that you can easily do the analysis because they move slow, but they have such a big structure, makes them really reasonable to watch and to follow close.
Yeah, I think what you said makes perfect sense in the context of their generational history, right? So they have this excess capacity, but they don't really care if they grow into it in 3 years, 4 years, or 5 years. They're going to do it in a healthy way. And if it takes a little longer, they're okay.
And they have this thing that can be game changing. I also say that on my report that the scientific team of Suzano are really good. So they are trying to produce clothes with pulp. What I can say, they bought many years ago a company called Spinova. They are finished. So they invented a material that you can use pulp to do some clothes and you can sell it. So it cannot substitute the textile industry, but you can make the textile industry cheaper and renewable. So there's a big trigger, and Suzano and Spinova are the first Suzano's operation abroad Brazil. They are now in, I don't know where in Finland. I know in Finland, Jyväskylä in Finland. They will start up. They started up last year to produce this new material that you can mix with some fibers, some cottons, and etc., and do more resistant and cheaper and sustainable material. And also, Adidas did a new collection with them. So again, it's a really brand new material, but this can be game changing because Suzano won't be only at the pulp and paper. There will be pulp, paper, and the textile industry. So we have to watch this closely too.
I think it's so interesting how you emphasized the research and development that they do. Because when most people think of Brazilian companies or commodities companies, they don't think about innovation and research and development, right? But you've talked about how Suzano basically invented the process historically.
Yeah.
Right. They spend significant investments doing genetic modifications of the seeds, which is no small thing. And then they're making acquisitions into new innovative textile type businesses, which it's so interesting to see because it's not what anyone would expect when you talk about a tree company, right? A pulp and paper company, but they are an innovative company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is Brazilian stuff. We have the biggest agribusiness in the world because of our technology and pulp and paper and grains and sugar cane. We're now using, and with the 4.0 industry, we are really, really far. So we have this automatization, we have this grid on the farms, we have this connection, we have the Elon Musk satellites giving internet to everyone. So it's really, really
it's
stuff.
So interesting too. You can find interesting little stuff like that in Brazil too, where the agro industry and innovation, like the flex fuel cars, is where the cars run on ethanol. Brazil's got the biggest fleet in the world, and that's another interesting agro type tech innovation. But let's wrap up Suzano then. I know you did, as part of your research piece, projected. You have a price target. Do you want to share maybe whether you think Suzano right now is undervalued, fairly valued, overvalued, and what do you expect moving forward?
Let me see the most recent prices, because now talking a little more analyst way, when we calculate our WACC, we do each tax discount rate to each year we project. So if I'm projecting,
I see. So you're projecting the interest rates in Brazil, so you won't use the same cost of capital in next year if you think rates are going to be at 8%.
Yeah. So we do a projection with each discount rate different for different years. So I mean, if Suzano, I project 8 years, so I have 8 different discount rates. So I mean, if our discount rates, basically the KE, the on cost of the company, we follow the Brazilian rates, the inflation and the futures. So each day we have a brand new price. So when I talk about the target price, it can change every day. So we do a weekly update on the prices. So let me see. Now the last prices is, just see today's prices. Today is 51 and 47 reais, and my price is 67 reais. So it's kind of 30% upside. So it's an interesting upside. As I said, it's a company that if you follow strictly the buy and hold philosophy and buy and forget, you can do it on Suzano and mostly in the company of the sector, the biggest ones, of course, because they are really secure and they really gives you peace on your mind because they are doing a great job.
Great. So I don't think we're going to have time to do Minerva, which I know we're not. So that
I
was great.
think we have
I,
to
we'll have to do
we
another
need to do
one.
the part two
We'll
of
do the beef industry, yeah, because I could still ask
yeah.
you another 20 questions about Suzano and Brazil's pulp and paper. But
Yeah.
I think that was a great, deep dive into the industry and Suzano. And yeah, anyone that's interested in the company certainly is going to learn something from this.
Okay.
So maybe to sign off, tell everyone, where they can find you, learn more about your work, Varos, how to get in touch on the internet.
Okay, you can follow me at Twitter at Gabi Boente, Boente. We are arguing about how we pronounce it in English. So you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram and Varos, also Varos, Varos, Varos on Twitter. And if you follow me and you say that you watch us, you found me through this podcast, you just DM me and I can give you the Suzano report that is really nice. It has 64 pages and I give you for free because I mean we did such great job on this report, all of us report, and with the artificial intelligence I could translate. So I have this in English right now. It's really beautiful.
Finally,
So
someone admitting they're using
yeah,
the AI to translate stuff, right?
yeah. So you can ask me.
I can't
You
tell
can
you
ask me.
how many Latin American analysts I've noticed their English has improved by like 10x in the
Yeah.
last 6 months when they write. It's great. But I can confirm the research report is great. I will link your profile and all the information so people get in touch with you in the show notes. And yeah,
Yep.
we'll do this again. And next time we'll do the beef industry.
Okay. Thank you, Patrick.
It was nice meeting you.
Thank you,
Thanks so much for
everyone.
doing this.
Okay. Bye bye,
Bye.
everyone.